Hey guys, I'm excited to introduce you to my guest today, Mr. Alan Nevin. We are old friends. I used to know him because we used to work next to each other. We were kind of neighbors in our businesses at the Al Cortez. We both used to work in the Cortez Hill. So Alan, thank you so much for joining us. You are a real estate legend.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear that.
You are. What does the word legend mean to you? When someone says the word legend, what does that mean to you?
It means I'm old.
No, not exactly. I mean, it means you've done a lot.
Well, I have done a lot.
Tell us about that. Share some of the stories of, because you are known in San Diego for just the person to go to with regards to cycles, with regards to economies and what's happening. And you've just wrote this amazing book called The Great Divide, which we're going to chat about a little bit later. But tell us take us back. What inspired you to get involved? How long have you been in real estate, and what inspired you to be involved in real estate and economics?
I guess I've always been in real estate. I was brought here about 40 years ago to be a director of market research for a company called American Housing Guild. And that company also has Guild Mortgage and is now Con Am Management. And I've been associated with them for about 40 years now. But in the process, I've also been a general partner in about 36 partnerships that built and managed and converted apartments.
That's right, about $250 million worth of projects.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah. So that's fantastic. And so what inspired you to get into the mortgage or real estate industry back in the day? Or how did you sort of come across it? What was the first sort of connection?
I guess the reality is that it was just a stroke of luck.
What happened?
And my brother-in-law was with this firm called American Housing Guild back in Washington, D.C. Heard they were looking for a national director of market research, told me about it, and I called out here, and they hired me.
What time period was that?
That was 1971.
So that very different landscape than what it is today.
People want to live here, and the entirety of the R&D industry really relates to UCSD. UCSD was only created in the early 1960s. When I got here in 1971, the campus was just a handful of buildings. And now, of course, they're pushing 40,000 students. It's really amazing. On any given day, there are 60 to 70,000 people on the UC campus. And it has blossomed into an enormous R&D center that has allowed the creation of the magnificent firms that are on the Mesa, be it the Salk Institute, the Scripps, the Burnham Institute. So you've had this remarkable expansion, and it's really put us on the map.
And it's more coming, right? So basically, you're saying that education is that sort of tipping point. The more education, the better.
Absolutely. And I find what's absolutely amazing is that government had nothing to do with it. It hadn't. Government, it just was there. The result is that it has exploded throughout the county, and as land has become more valuable close in, you begin to see the R&D industries moving northward toward Carlsbad, and now you're going to start seeing it along the 56. So you're going to have another major wave of R&D expansion.
I really like the Vancouver example of San Diego versus Vancouver, because it's sort of also that border town, right? So Tijuana has a lot to do with the growth that's happening with San Diego as well, right? There's a lot of that.
Yes, the Maquiadora plants along the border have been a major impetus for growth here. 50% of the Maquiadora firms have office or research presence here in this county.
So, and for the guys that don't know what Maquiadora is,
a twin plant. It's part of NAFTA, where you are allowed to take goods that are created here, move them across the border to be assembled, bring them back into the country, without any tax implications. So we have something in excess of 200,000 people working in the Geodora plants near our border.
I remember reading a market report that you just wrote for 2018, and that sort of lower income labor source is something that's needed. You know, we're going to see that the migrant states, but doesn't being right next to Mexico sort of help this city become what it's supposed to be?
Well, we are the only major city on the 2,200 mile border with Mexico. So it funnels to San Diego, and Tijuana has 1.8 million people there, and it's a complete interaction between the two metropolitan areas. And as Tijuana modernizes, which it is, you will see even more interaction occurring.
So what does San Diego need to do to get onto the same sort of level as San Fran, or not even as big as San Fran, as Seattle, right? Seattle is a much smaller city comparatively in size-wise, but they create a much more, they're a bigger economic engine. So what does San Diego need to do to sort of grow up, so to speak?
What the city should be doing should be a major campaign with tax incentives to bring 2 or 3 of the major R&D firms downtown. Because right now, 75 to 80% of the people who live downtown commute outward in the suburbs to go to work. So we have relatively few people who actually live downtown and work downtown. And that's what makes a great city.
Right, is to build that development. I love it. And so I think that sort of segues to my next question of what are the opportunities in San Diego, in real estate at the moment, based on where we are in the cycle? I mean, it's kind of a two-sided question. What is happening with the cycle, and where do you see the opportunities on a macro level and on a city level as well?
The answer is we don't have any cycles right now. We have been on a steady path upward since 2009. So we're heading into our 10th year of a positive upward movement. Fortunately, not wild, very subtle, slowly moving, but very positive. We've been adding more than 20,000 jobs a year here now for 7 or 8 years. So we continue to prosper. The growth of downtown particularly, we've had this enormous burst of rental apartment construction, with the exception of the 2 BOSA projects, Pacific Gate and Savina. We have not had a new condominium start construction since 2007. And that's a shame, because the market is there for them, but the Canadian developers, who basically were responsible for almost all of the condominium construction downtown, have opted not to come back, mainly because they're so busy in Vancouver and Seattle and other markets that they've sort of forgotten about us for now. And that's unfortunate. And
I remember in your market report you said that has a ripple effect, right? The person that lives in an apartment doesn't necessarily go to Home Depot every day to fix up their house, right?
Exactly. The multiplier effect of owned homes is, technically it's a 2-to-1 multiplier, which is about as good as you get in the world of business. There are very few industries that have a 2-to-1 multiplier effect.
And real estate has it.
Yeah, the key has always been, in a recession, every president knows that if you want to get out of a recession fast, you start throwing money at home builders. And that gets you out of it. Interestingly enough, the only president, modern president, who hasn't done that was President Obama. And as a result of that, our recovery has been very slow and steady, whereas in almost all other recoveries, it's been almost straight up. So we have this fascinating situation where you have to ask yourself, when is the next recession? And I scratch my head and I say, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years, because we're not in the kind of mode where you shoot up and then go down. We've just been steady, and I can't find any chinks in the armor. It's really sort of amazing. I look at every single economic indicator, and it's just smooth.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting what's happening, because it's kind of unparamounted to kind of have this consistent uptick year over year and steady and stable. Because there's also, normally with the changing cycle, you're able to see mortgages crazy, you're able to kind of see it ahead of time, and I just don't think you can. And based on what's happening, it seems very stabilized and consistent.
Yeah, well, I have a very simple theory as it relates to this administration. I think that every morning when President Trump gets up, he only thinks about 2 things. One is interest rates, and the second is how can he make his value of his real estate go up. And I think that's not a bad strategy for this country. And his first year in office has been an amazing economic success. So no matter what you think of, everything's right. Low unemployment rate, creating a lot of jobs. Housing market is moving forward very nicely. And I think 2018 is going to be an exceptionally good year for construction of new homes, and particularly here in San Diego. I think that with the opening of the Otay Ranch, right now there are 35 new for sale projects in Otay Ranch. The entire standing inventory of completed homes down there, 3 homes as of the end of the year.
I wanted to ask you a question about what was kind of, you've been in the real estate and in finance and analytics for a long time. What is like the one aha moment that's kind of hit you where you're like, you maybe didn't expect that, or you're kind of surprised by it over the last 40 years of doing this?
I guess the reality is I never could have anticipated the increase in pricing of apartment projects.
On the sale side or on the development side?
On the sale.
Okay, so the cap rate, the valuation of
the cap rate and the price per unit that we're seeing in San Diego, and there are literally a small handful of markets in the nation that have experienced the kind of upside that we have seen here. It's somewhat remarkable. When a friend of mine and I were accumulating apartments back in the 1970s, we accumulated about 1,000 apartments here. Average price was $23,000 a unit.
Wow.
And nobody even knew what a cap rate was. And it's fairly remarkable to see what has happened in terms of price per unit, even for, let's say, C-quality units. And what's remarkable is that it's all over the county. It's not just La Jolla that sees low cap rates. It's all around the place.
Absolutely.
And we seem to be the darling of the investment community nationally. And when I see apartment units, new ones, turning over for $500,000 a unit, which is probably a 2 cap, I say, I don't understand this, but the idea, of course, is there's too much money out there, and they have to place
safety.
They have to place the money, and it's not just international. I mean, even the local, the REITs are so flush with cash, they've got to put it somewhere.
Even if they're making 2%.
Yeah, exactly, and they know eventually they'll win.
With an equity play or something.
Yeah, at some point in time, and as a result of that, is that we are probably one of the 4 or 5 most expensive apartment investment markets in the country.
And is that an opportunity if you're a new investor or developer? Is that the place to play?
Well, the real opportunities are in value add. Our average apartment unit here is 43 years of age. We have an old stock of apartments, most of which, even in good locations, are of C quality. And the way to make money is to take a C and turn it into a B. And you do that by the typical renovation. You have to put a washer and dryer in each unit, and you dress it up, and that'll give you the opportunity to raise rents substantially and to get your money back.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, I totally believe in that. But then what about supply, right? If the value add is the strategy, then what about the amount of supply of apartments that's coming to market?
Okay, well, the problem is you can't build cheap here. To build an apartment unit here, now I'm not talking downtown, I'm just talking suburbs, you're going to be at $300,000 to $350,000 a unit to create something new. And given our anti-development mentality in this county, you know, it might take you 3 to 5 years, or maybe never, to get a project approved. So, and then you never get it approved for as many units as you think you're going to do. We have a completely outdated parking ratio for new apartments that is really geared more to distant suburbs than it is urban living. And the result of that is that to build something new is incredibly expensive. I have a client who's just completing a 12 unit in North Park, and he's in at over $500,000 a unit.
Wow.
So that's why the value add on the old stuff makes sense.
So segueing into the future, because you just wrote this book called The Great Divide, and I got a chance to look through a little bit of it, and give us sort of the overview and what inspired you to write this book, and what are some of the highlights and the takeaways that people can expect from reading this?
It's accumulation of a bunch of the research that I've done over the last couple of decades, and it all sort of came together. And the basic theory is that there are some industrialized countries in this world that are moving forward very fast, and many others that are moving backwards. And it all relates to kids and the number of kids you have. The formula is very simple. For every mom and dad, you have to have 2 kids. If you don't have that, your economy starts going downhill. If you look at Japan, which has 1.4 kids per mom and dad, in the next 30 years, Japan is going to go from 125 million down to 100 million people. Just imagine in proportion, if you knew in 30 years this country were going to lose 50 or 75 million people. Just think what that would mean. So when you look around the world, you have to look at those markets that are having kids. Canada is doing a great job of having kids. Britain's doing a nice job. Australia's doing fine. But most of the European countries are dying, literally. Russia is dead. That's gone. They stopped having kids in World War II. And even China is slowing down dramatically. In the next 30 years, the big action is really going to be the US, Canada, and India.
In India.
Yeah, they're going to do very well because they have that 2:0 ratio that really works.
Right.
And as a result of that, I'm very bullish on the United States. Now, the important thing is that we must keep immigration flowing in. If we don't keep having a large number of people coming in from Mexico and the Far East, we will not be able to maintain our 2:0 ratio because our people are not having enough kids.
Gotcha.
So as long as we do that, we will be in glorious shape. And then within the United States, as is rather evident in this book, it's the gold states where all the action. 75% of all our population gain are in these 15 states. And the Census Bureau just came out with their numbers for the last year that I find somewhat startling. Virtually half of the entire population gain in this nation in the last year was in Florida, Texas, and California.
Wow.
So 3 states with almost half.
So that basically, you want to also put your money, you invest where people are moving to, right? I mean,
I think that's a very cogent thought. Yes.
So if you're going bullish on the United States for 30 years, you're going bullish on those states within the United States.
And those metropolitan areas within those states. I mean, last week, the median home price in the city of Detroit was $45,000.
Wow.
So, you want to buy there because it's cheap? The question is, what will it be in 10 years? It could still be $45,000. So you really want to go where the people are going. We know that 25% of the seniors in New York say they're going to move to Florida, and they will.
And there's also they also want to move to California one day. That's the dream, right?
And well, you see, the good news is that California is a magnet for the Far East and Mexico and South America. And we continue to bring in large numbers of folks, and they tend to be those who are educated and have money, and that's about as good as you get.
And what I love about the growth that California is achieving, I think in your market report you spoke about how California's population is more than Canada as a whole country.
Yes.
And just slightly less than Spain as a country, right?
Correct.
But in California, San Diego is the second biggest city in the state as well, compared to LA.
Yes.
Right? So, as an investor, I'm investing in San Diego, and I believe as well in San Diego in the long run. And I think all those factors kind of come together, right? So it's the United States, California, and then even San Diego is a good sort of play over the next 30 years.
Yeah, and what I find about California that's really amazing, you have a legislature which is to the left of Lenin, but the business community completely ignores the politics and continues to grow unabated.
It's going to be really interesting, especially as policies become sort of more contemporary with the changes in technology, such as Uber and Airbnb. How do you see technology affecting the economy, affecting real estate values over the next 25 years?
You can use Airbnb, but it's not going to be your permanent home. Okay? So the answer is that the housing market in California will continue to prosper. Sure, there'll be ups and downs, there always are. But the reality is, we don't have the political will to build our way out of the shortage that we have now.
So this section of our interview is called Rapid Fire Questions. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions and just go for it. First thing that comes to your mind. You ready?
Go ahead.
All right. Residential or commercial?
Residential.
Cash flow or equity?
Equity.
Renovations or ground up development?
Renovation.
If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
To be able to write a lot of checks.
If you could change one thing from your life, what would it be?
To move here sooner.
If you could have one wish or create one policy in regards to real estate or the economy, what would it be?
Get rid of community planning groups.
What one quote has inspired you or you use, or what's one of your favorite quotes out of it?
Well, as it relates to the shortage of housing, the situation is hopeless, but not serious.
I like that. Fantastic. Well, thanks again, Alan. Really appreciate you being here.
Aaron,
Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you.